Hey, this is Kenny's Audiophile Record Reviews. Thank you very much for viewing my channel. And as always, if you're new to my channel, please like and subscribe. I sincerely appreciate that. In this video, I'm going to review two jazz albums. One on a Blue Note label, one on an Impulse Jazz record label. And also, per one of my viewer suggestions, his name is Tony Davis. He mentioned in a comment that I should do a list of my favorite vibraphone players. He said that's an underrated instrument. I agree. He was kind enough to leave a PayPal donation payment in the PayPal link below. Those of you who are able to do that, I appreciate that. Even if it's $1, $10, $5, $2, whatever you can afford, that'll help my channel out going forward. But thank you very much, Tony Davis, for that donation and the suggestion. Then I'm going to start with a review of one Blue Note jazz record and one Impulse jazz record. And the first record I'm going to review is A Waiting Game by Tina Brooks. This version of the record was issued on a Tone Poet series. I believe it was issued in 2020, mastered by Kevin Grace, supervised by Joe Harley, recorded by Rudy Van Gelder back in the day. Show you the cover. Sorry for the glare in the picture. I know that's coming out bright. Sorry about that. And the Tone Poet series always has these magnificent gatefolds. This album features Tina Brooks tenor sax, Johnny Coles trumpet, Kenny Drew piano, Wilbur Ware bass, Philly Joe Jones drums. Again, this album was originally released in originally recorded in 1961, but it was not released in Japan until 1999, in the United States until 2002. I just simply don't understand why they had that long delay and why they didn't release this album sooner, because it's actually quite good in my opinion. Tina Brooks did not have a lot of albums as a leader, but he was a guest on several albums, a guest musician. Unfortunately passed away at the age of 42 in 1974. So, he unfortunately did not get to reap the benefits of this very nice performance, in my opinion. He's a highly underrated tenor sax player. Tina is a nickname. I think his real name is Harold Brooks, and he got the nickname Tina, I think, as when he was younger. But I think you should definitely check this album out on YouTube. It's an underrated record, an underrated recording, and an underrated performance by Tina Brooks and his backing band on this record. There's no doubt about this Blue Note jazz record. It's one you should definitely check out. I think this one flew under the radar. And it's a nice performance by Tina Brooks and crew. I give the performance an 8.5 and the sound a 9. The Tone Poet series, they always do magnificent recordings. That one's no exception. This one was originally released in 1965, if I recall. Sonny Rollins on Impulse. This particular version of the record was issued on the Acoustic Sound series, Acoustic Sounds Verve series. This is my reissue copy of the album. And Chad Kessam and crew, they always do a very nice job in their releases. No doubt, in my opinion. It's a nice gatefold art. It's a picture of Sonny Rollins as he arrives at the recording date. I believe that's Rudy Van Gelder greeting him. Let me see what it says. Welcome by Rudy Van Gelder at the door. But this too was a very nice album. I listened to this album, the Sonny Rollins album, and the Tina Brooks album during the same listening session. And it was a thoroughly enjoyable listening session. This acoustic jazz, it was just a very cool listening session on my Rega P8 turntable with a Feather 3 cartridge. What an underrated performance on Sonny Rollins on this particular album as well. We have Sonny Rollins tenor sax, Ray Bryant piano, Walter Booker bass, Mickey Roker drums. Again, recorded in 1965 on one recording date July 8. You should definitely check this record out because Sonny Rollins is underratedly playing magnificently on that record. Check it out on YouTube. The Performance 9 and the Sound 9 on that particular record. Now I'm going to get to, again, my favorite vibes player list. Now, these are not in any particular order. Like I said, these are not in any particular order, except at the end, I'm going to mention my favorite jazz vibes player and vibes player who I think is the best. I'm going to do that at the end. Otherwise, these are in no particular order. But my viewer, Tony Davis, mentioned Roy Ayers, who, again, passed away on March 4th, 2025, I believe at the age of 84. He was a very highly skilled vibes player. I believe he started with Herbie Mann in the mid-60s, somewhere around 1966. He's featured on this 1967 Herbie Mann album, and also this Impressions of the Middle East album, another Herbie Mann album. I forgot when this came out. I don't know if they have a recording. 1967 as well. Roy Ayers is on both of those albums, and then later on he was his own leader in a band, and he had that that jazz jazz funk type of sound to him. He sang to. I think my favorite Roy Ayers song is one he actually sings on. I think it's called Sweet Tears. You might want to check out Sweet Tears on YouTube. He displays his singing voice and vibraphone playing as well. What a magnificent vibes player Roy Ayers really was. He's one of my favorites. And again, these are in no particular order. The last one is going to be the one I think is the best. And also before that one, before I get to the best one, I'm going to mention my favorite jazz vibraphone player. You might want to stay tuned for that. But I'm going to start with Victor Feldman. He's not the best, but he's on my list for sure. He was a great piano player as well. Played with Miles Davis. He played the vibes, percussion. Played with Miles Davis. I believe he was on some of the Lighthouse Jazz All-Star albums as well. Victor Feldman. Another one is Terry Gibbs. I checked on YouTube, and as of the posting date of this video, it claims on YouTube, not YouTube, but on the internet, that he's 100 years old. He was a nice band leader, a sensational vibraphone player. And he had albums with, on Savoy, Verve, Contemporary Records, Emerson. Terry Gibbs has to be mentioned amongst the best jazz vibes player who ever lived, in my opinion. Also, Red Norvo is actually quite excellent as well. Another one that I want to mention in this video, and Tony Davis mentioned it in his comments, in his PayPal payment, was Dave Pike. Now, Dave Pike came very, very close to being my favorite vibes jazz player. Not the best, but my favorite, because he had this vibe and groove, like in the late 60s, early 70s, that was, he really upheld the jazz. It did not disrespect jazz, but he played in a style that attracted a young audience. Vibrant, that Dave Pike vibe and groove of the late 60s, early 70s was simply magnificent. This album is called Noisy Silence, Gentle Noise, the Dave Pike set. This is a reissue album. And those of you who have not heard Dave Pike or heard him play like in the late 60s, early 70s, he was simply sensational. Like I said, came very close to being my favorite vibes player, jazz vibes player of all time. The next one is an all-time great as well, Milt Jackson. I mean, he played with the Modern Jazz Quartet. He had the Milt Jackson, I think what Bill Evans was to piano, Milt Jackson, in my opinion, was to vibes, because he had this beautiful tone and tonality and style to his play. If you listen to him on some of his recordings, this is Milt Jackson, Count Basie Volume 2 on Pablo Records. I wish I had Volume 1 so I can do a video on it. but I don't. And he played famously with the Modern Jazz Quartet. That's a cool band, the Modern Jazz Quartet. The next two are like, like Latin style jazz. They were very popular, highly adept at playing the vibes. Although Tito Puente was a percussionist as well, but he played the vibes. He was equally adept at playing the vibes. Like I said, Latin jazz. He was a sensational talent in terms of the representation of the vibes instrument. And he was a showman too. Tito Puente had to be mentioned. Also, if I didn't mention Red Norvo, I want to mention him again. If I didn't, he was great. I should have bought out one of his albums. Cal Jader. He was cool with the Latin style. He was cool with the traditional jazz style. I have a ton of his records. He made a lot of albums. He must have been selling records like crazy if they're going to issue albums in that, particular type of volume, because I have a ton of his albums. The great Cal Jader. He was, like I said, sensational in that, Latin jazz style of play and traditional style jazz play as well. The next one, some of you may have at your number one. I have no problem with it. He was a legendary vibraphone player. He played with Benny Goodman, Charles Mingus, Charlie Parker, Lionel Hampton. I think he was my favorite. Not my favorite, but one of my father's favorite jazz musicians, Lionel Hampton, the great Lionel Hampton. He played the instrument with great joy, how they had that beautiful smile on his face when he was playing the instrument. I remember seeing him on television when I was younger. It's one of his older contemporary records. And again, like I said, he played with the legendary Benny Goodman as well. Benny Goodman always recruited sensational musicians in his band. I mean, my God, he has Count Basie, Harry James, Gene Krupa, Lionel Hampton, Teddy Wilson, Lester Young, Buck Clayton, and Bobby Hackett on his album. Benny Goodman was a genius in terms of a recruiter, in terms of, recruiting talent. I guess he wanted the best. And he didn't care about race or anything. Benny Goodman, one of the best musicians in his band, and he succeeded. Now I'm down to two. Now this one is going to be my favorite jazz vibraphone player, and then after that I'm gonna mention the one who I think is the greatest of all time. But Gary McFarland is my favorite jazz vibraphone player because of his style of play. He was an early prodigy, I think in the late 50s, early 60s. Unfortunately, he passed away in the early 70s at a young age. Unfortunately, he didn't reach his creative heights. He was co-founder of a record company. It escapes me the name of that company at the moment. Hopefully it'll come to me by the end of this video. But he was co-founder, I think, with Gabor Szabo and I just forgot the name of that other partner in the record company. But his vibrant groove, he was almost like, a lot of his mid-60s work, like Cal Jader was, I think, may have been a partner in that record company. So Cal Jader, Gabor Szabo, and Gary McFarland must have been partners in a record company in the late 60s, early 70s. But he had this style of playing that was almost like maybe 70% jazz and 30% easy listening, and he pulled it off sensationally. Show you a picture of inside of this gatefold. And I discovered his albums my early college years in the early 80s, and I've been a fan of his ever since. Like I said, he passed away at a young age, tragically, in the early 70s. This is an album that he did with Bill Evans. Bill Evans as a guest soloist on this album. There's a picture of Bill Evans and Gary McFarland inside the gatefold. And here's a couple of them he did on Impulse Jazz Records, although he is the composer and conductor on this record with Steve Kuhn. And also, he played the marimba on this record, Tijuana Jazz, with Clark Terry. Now, the last one is my favorite. Not my favorite. Gary McFarland was my favorite. I think this gentleman is the greatest of all time. You can leave your comments in the comment section below on that topic. There's no right or wrong answer. Like I said, also, I'm sure I have some glaring omissions in terms of vibes players. This was not meant to be a comprehensive list by any means. On anybody's list, there's going to be some glaring omissions. But I think, in my opinion, Bobby Hutcherson is the greatest vibes player, in my opinion, in terms of his style of play, his output, the quality of music. You know, he was a leader on several albums. He was a guest artist on numerous Blue Note albums and numerous other albums. He did a little acting. He was in a movie, Round Midnight, that was featured Dexter Gordon. He was in Round Midnight as a brief acting role. Is another one of his great albums as well. This one on a Tone Poet label. But Bobby Hutcherson, in terms of, like I said, his style of play, his skill set, the way he adapted to different styles of other musicians as a guest artist on some of those great Blue Note records, other labels, how he played as a leader on his own records. Like I said, his skill set was off the charts amazing. Bobby Hutcherson, I think, is the greatest vibes player who ever lived. I know some of you might have the great Lionel Hampton. I have no problem with that. Milt Jackson was great. There's some many other greats that I did not mention in this video, so please leave your favorites in the comments section below. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for viewing my video. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. God bless, strong love, and as always, keep the peace worldwide.